folks, welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate Radio Show. This is Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor, and I am here with my guest, Erin Quinn, the most fabulous attorney in the whole United States of America. No, that's only my opinion. Hey, we'll give you that title. Let's go. When you're on my show, you're the most fabulous. But before we left for that break, right, we were talking about foreclosure costs and, the evil prospect that maybe somebody, if you're a mortgage note owner, right, one of your borrowers that's paying you that monthly mortgage payment, for some reason or another, things happen in people's lives. They go delinquent on their mortgage, right? And there's a few things we can do, folks. We can do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. If somebody wants to just deed the house over to us and walk away clean, they can do that. That's their choice. They have that choice. We can even offer a cash for keys situation. Maybe somebody got themselves in a bad financial situation, folks, and they might need some help financially to move, to hire a U-Haul, to put a deposit on their new place, or whatever it may be. There's all sort of options that we try to pursue as ethical note investors prior to making the phone call to Erin Quinn and saying, hey, Erin, we need to do a foreclosure action, right? And then, but Erin comes in, she's the pro you need in your corner, guys. The best boxers in the world heavyweight champion of the world, goes and he has a good corner team in his corner to make sure that they're taking care of him and he can go out and swing and do this, but he needs that corner. And Erin Quinn is the one you want in your corner if you're in Florida or Georgia. So let's get into this, Erin. We were talking about, we chit-chatted just during the break there while our sponsors were giving their wonderful message to our audience. But we're talking about, due diligence is half the battle. So that's my line, right? I always say due diligence is half the battle in note investing, and it is. And due diligence is what allows you to review all possible outcomes, all possible timeframes, all possible costs, holding costs, foreclosure costs. This all has to come into play in your due diligence, in my opinion, before you even buy the asset, right? You have to know all the things that can happen and what is going to be the costs and the timeframes involved if those certain things happen. Now, if I do, Erin, you tell me if I'm wrong, because you're my counsel. Okay. You tell me if I'm wrong here. If I do thorough due diligence.
Are you asking me for legal advice?
Well, hey, you're I can, right? If I do thorough due diligence, right? Really thorough due diligence, and I actually know what I'm doing to perform that due diligence, I should know every outcome that can happen. And all of those outcomes should look okay to me as the investor, or I shouldn't buy the note.
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yeah. Honestly, I think that you have to be ready to exit in each of those ways, right? And figure out what your return is on each of those exits. And, I'm sure that you can speak, significantly to that, which, by the way, my partner and I are planning on taking your note school class so that I can kind of learn more about the investor side and how I can help you guys on the front end of things better than what my current stuff is. So I'm looking forward to your school, and I hope that everybody else does the same, because they'd be remiss to not do it. So, but I think that for me on the due diligence side, one thing that I see a lot happen is, people get into the industry and they realize that they want to do this, and they think that they're savvy enough to look over the docs and figure out what the situation is. How is the paper look? Can you enforce the promissory note? Can you sue on the mortgage? What options can you have? But there's a lot of things that go into that people don't realize. And I think that there's, for me, there's kind of like the investor space picks out these certain few things as far as the status of the actual physical documents, but they aren't looking at things such as how they're executed, or, whether or not they're an actual lien on the property. Are there, superior liens on the property? Is there, are the taxes paid? Things like that. So the due diligence process is really important for that. And what we find a lot of times that happens is that people want to buy the paper and they're like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. I'm sure it's fine. It's fine. It's going to be fine. But then it's not fine. None of it's fine. So the big thing on the due diligence side for me is, to the extent that you do not know the state in your sleep, as far as what you need to have, allonges, assignments. If you don't know those words, then you need an attorney to look over your due diligence for you. Pay histories. How did they charge it off during the course of the case? Is it a home equity line of credit, or is it a negotiable instrument promissory note? These are all things that, again, if you don't know the words that I'm saying, it means that you probably need to learn them or see an attorney that knows them. And so when a due diligence file comes into me, my first is always to look at the chain of title or the chain of endorsements on the promissory note. So you've got basically I would say three major documents in any house purchase, along with all of your disclosures and federal forms and all of that stuff, right? You've got your deed to the property, which is the ownership. So that is what transfers ownership from seller to buyer in a real estate transaction. You've got a promissory note, which is the promise to pay the actual money. And that's between the borrower and the lender. And that is usually the buyer in the real estate transaction, obviously, unless they're refinancing and then they already own the property. And that promissory note is basically, I promise to pay $200,000 and I promise to pay it by this date at this interest rate. And then I promise to pay it in installment payments every single month from, this month to the end of the maturity. That document in and of itself is extremely important because that is the actual debt that you own. And this is, again, caveating, this is Florida and Georgia. It could be different in other states. I don't know. I would think that they would all have that same rule because a negotiable instrument is a negotiable instrument, promissory note is a promissory note. But just make sure that if you are in other states that you're confirming that that's the case if it is important to your situation. And then the mortgage, and all the mortgage is a tether from the money to the property, from the money to the deed. So that mortgage basically connects the ownership of the property and the note together and says, if I don't pay that money back that the lender gave me to buy this property, then the lender can take it back. So that tether is what is the meat and potatoes of a mortgage foreclosure case. Yeah. Promissory note, again, super important because that's your debt, but having that mortgage, that's your secured interest in the property. And that's what allows you to take the property instead of having to sue them on the note. So those two documents in general, the note and the mortgage are the two documents that I look at to see, can my client investor foreclose? And so I look at the note and I say, okay, it's payable to ABC Bank. Did ABC Bank make it payable to my client? That's what an endorsement is. It takes the loan or the note from party one to party two. It's a transfer. It's a negotiation. All those words are kind of used the same in the legal industry. Yeah. And that endorsement and having a full chain. So A to B, B to C, C to D, not A to D or A to B and then C to D. I don't know if that is going to be confusing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could even tie in like so if somebody, let me tell you, if you own a home, right? If somebody's on here listening, you own a home, right? Some of this is sounding foreign to you, right? Make it simple. You own a home and you originally got your 30-year mortgage with Wells Fargo and you've been living at your house, paying your mortgage payment on time every month, everything's hunky-dory for about a year or two. And all of a sudden you get a letter in the mail that says Wells Fargo no longer has your mortgage. Now it's Bank of America. So you better start sending your mortgage payments to Bank of America every month. And some homeowners can feel that, right? Well, that was a transfer of your mortgage debt. One bank transferred your mortgage debt that you owed to another bank and you got that letter, right? So what Erin is trying to say is maybe there are some of these mortgages that have been transferred 7 different times. A bank, Wells Fargo to Bank of America to who knows. And there is a chain or a list, I guess you can call it for layman's terms, but there's a list of owners that have owned that and that has to be accounted for, the proper transfer docs and such like that. None of that can be out of it.
And in your scenario, what it would be is, you take the loan out with Wells Fargo sells the debt. At that point, they actually have to pay to the order of Bank of America. Yeah. And that's what an endorsement is just pay to the order of Bank of America. And that is a negotiation or a transfer of the instrument. And that's usually done in the form of a legal document called an allonge. And an allonge and an endorsement are essentially the same thing, just the allonge is a different piece of paper. So that is what that transfer or that negotiation of that document is what allows you to do the foreclosure. And then in addition to that, the mortgage also transfers a certain way. So it transfers by assignment. So just like you would have an endorsement from Wells Fargo and Bank of America in our example, you would also have an assignment from Wells Fargo to Bank of America. And that would be recorded in the public record so that everybody knows who the mortgage company is at that current time.
Yeah.
And so those two documents are part of the due diligence process. That we're kind of getting in the weeds here a little bit on those documents, but those are the first two things we look at, right? From there, it's, did they provide you a payment history? And you kind of go through this list of what could go wrong if I were, if I buy this debt, what could go wrong? Like what would I need to prove that this person owes me the money? And so all the documents that you need to prove that that person owes you the money is what you should have in the due diligence package. And status of your borrowers. Did they file bankruptcy? Do they still live in the house? Like there's all kinds of different, and to that extent, I think that due diligence is also investor specific, right? Because you, Patrick, as a note investor, might have certain criteria that you look at, and then there might be certain things you don't care about. And then the other thing, for instance, maybe Desi looks at a note, and Desi, another note investor, and Desi sees something completely different, and the note's okay for him, but it's not okay for Patrick because it doesn't fit Patrick's portfolio and kind of what he wants for his business, but it fits better in Desi. So each person isn't going to have just the same criteria in that instance. So it's very important to figure out what your criteria is, but there's always going to be certain things that every single loan you're going to want to have.
Yeah. I mean, when we get into this and we start teaching students over at the Note Investor University, we're saying, look, one of the things we have to start with is the education piece. Because if you don't know, you don't know. Once you get educated and you want to be a doer, one of the first things we do with folks as students, Erin, is we help them. We help them to figure out their own personal investment criteria, because that's different for everybody based on where you want to go within the next 3 to 5 years. Do you want a fast acceleration of capital growth? Do you want monthly cash flow to retire now? Where are you at and what do you want this business to do for you? And it's like, look, it's all different. It's all individual. You set up your own personal investment criteria. And then that's when Erin is saying, hey, one of these notes that may look juicy to a fellow note investor of mine may hit my desk and I may say, no way, I'll pass on that all day because it just doesn't meet my personal investment criteria, right?
Which could be first, like, do you want first that pay? Do you want seconds that don't pay? What is it that you are specifically looking for, and what is your appetite for risk is probably another thing to look at there. And a lot of that does depend, or what you end up investing in does depend on your appetite for risk and how much, how conservative you have to be and how much time you have.
And I'm going to ask you this, right? I know that I've always utilized your services as a skilled note investor. When I've already had a note in my portfolio for a while, it goes delinquent, it's giving me trouble, whatever. I'm like, Erin, what's up? I need help with this one, right? I took the hard road and had to study for an entire year, and I couldn't stand it, right? But I was studying. I said, I haven't been in school or college in years, but here I am studying again, right? But it's all for the right purposes for me to become financially free. I have to know this stuff, right? But I promise I studied for a year to be 90% a due diligence expert, right? And I say 90% because no one's ever going to be 100% due diligence expert. Things change, laws change, cities change. No, so I figure I'm pretty darn good at it. But what if somebody is more of a beginner and they haven't taken the time? I mean, could I have a note that I want to buy? And then I'm like, but I need help with this due diligence, man. I need somebody like Erin who can help me read through these docs and figure out what I have here before I buy it. Can you help do pre-due diligence before somebody buys an asset like this?
Absolutely. So, that is one of the services the firm offers. And, I know that having an expert in a certain state that you're looking at, especially with some investors that are nationwide, or like you said, getting into your first one, nationwide investors, they don't have time to know all the rules. They don't want to know all the rules. They want somebody that has the time to look through it and knows all the rules to deal with it. And that's where I come in.
Yes. So, and I'm going to tell you this, if you want to get to be a pro and you want to study and do like I did, that's what we teach you at the Note Investor University. Go check out the website. You can be a pro, but most people don't want to do that. It's tough stuff and it takes a lot to learn. So you want somebody like Erin Quinn in your corner. And when we come back from this last commercial break, we're going to show you what services Erin Quinn and her firm can provide for you and how you can get a hold of her if you have questions on any of this stuff. And let me tell you, she's somebody good, like I said, to have in your corner, guys. So you're going to want to hang out. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.